Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 455 and 456, The Friends' Whereabouts, Revolutionaries, and the Gorging Forest's Trap, and The Friends' Whereabouts, A Huge Tomb and the Panty Debt. In these episodes, we check in with Nico Robin, with Usopp, with Zoro, and with the skeleton guy. Sorry. I do not know how I feel about these episodes. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning these episodes. Brooke, so sorry. I forgot his name was Brooke. Y'all, these were weird. These were real weird, vibey episodes. So, I will say that I appreciate at least that Brooke asking to see this girl's panties results in him getting a look at all of the men's underwear over and over again, because they just assume that he has the thing about underwear in general, almost like it's his power source. And I just think that's adequate revenge, because he is just, the fact that he keeps asking this. I really, really enjoy Brooke as a character, and he keeps really bringing the energy down with this. But the whole thing with him is such a weird storyline, like where that's going anyway. We'll get there. The main episode that, oh no, I'm sorry guys, I'm trying to play this on Hulu, that's where I watched it, and it's giving me an error when I try and play it. And I was planning on, just having it playing in the background so that I could talk to you about each scene, and it isn't working. That's annoying. I had been, on Funimation, but when I tried to log in, it wasn't, it was acting as if I no longer have a account with them, which doesn't make any sense. It's just, I have been having a lot of weird issues today. Okay, now it looks like it's working on Funimation, so I'll go ahead and use this one. Anyway, sorry. The main thing that I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this, is the Nico Robin storyline on Tequila Wolf. Every time I remember that's what that place is called, it's a little bit funnier. I think I have a hard time with the tonal shift between the goofiness of all the other plot lines and what's happening with Robin. It's just such an abrupt shift. The change in tone is so total. And I can't help but feel kind of weird about the fact that she always seems to be the one that's getting tortured. It just keeps happening to Robin in particular. And it feels unfair in a way that I'm like, is this just because she's a hot woman and there's a pervy quality to this? Is it meant to be kind of her figuring out how she can redeem herself because she feels not responsible for her island getting annihilated, but I'm sure she carries a little bit of guilt with her for that, and maybe this will feel like she's able to make up for that somehow with these people. But everybody else's plot is so silly. What's going on with each of them is, we've got Frankie, who turns into a British man. We have Zoro, who's just going around this island getting lost over and over again. We have Usopp eating and getting fat and getting swallowed by a flower that's actually the island. I don't know what's going on with him. all of them are having these very silly adventures. And then we have Nico Robin, who's being held prisoner, endlessly tortured. And she's in like a fascist run community. It just feels really, really weird. You know, I don't think I would have the same reaction to her storyline if it were the main storyline and all of our other friends were also here, because that's what we were doing with Sabaody. You know, we were dealing with slavery. We were dealing with a ruling class that was monstrous, and it was consistent because everybody was here. But it's just a bizarre thing to go from Chopper being tossed off a cliff by a giant bird and bouncing around on the forest floor to her being essentially waterboarded. Like, what are we doing? So I'm really curious how y'all feel about this one. It's a shame because, you know, the past several episodes, there has been nobody in the chat. And so I haven't got a good idea whether I'm alone in this, you know, overall assessment of everything. But I hope it doesn't seem like I'm being unreasonably harsh. It's just jarring, and I don't know really how, like, what to even say about a lot of the plot, because it's so over the top, the way that the obvious nature of where we're heading with all of this, right? So anyway, let's just and also, guys, like the fact that she's being tortured and the way that her uniform is like torn open in the front, it feels very much like we're insinuating sexual assault is also happening. Just the vibes are off. It's all really off. So we go over to, you know, we have a real short moment of her being tortured. And then we go to the sort of captain, I guess, who is eating his dinner and talking out loud to himself about how Nico Robin being here is a real hazard. That, like, when she was only 6 and 8 years old, she was already like a legend and like sinking ships. She managed to break out of, she didn't break out of Impelled Down exactly, I guess, because she hadn't quite gotten there yet, but she was in custody and they got her out. So she is somebody that's not to be trifled with. And this guy is rightfully thinking she's really capable. So I want to ensure that she isn't able to like get out and do anything. And also I have to make sure nobody else here knows who she is, because I think his thinking is she could serve as like a inspiration for all of them. So one of the other guards comes in and tells him like construction is slowing down. We're having some difficulties. And he says to double the work hours and drop to 1 meal a day. And, you know, just again, like the very literally cartoonishly evil. This guy is responding about people who are opposed to the construction and like, we shouldn't be so strict. And the captain says there aren't that many of them and they can't do anything. The only threat we have is anyway, you need to see the laborers as expendable, which, this is very concentration campy. I really shouldn't use the word campy next to the word concentration. That didn't work. But anyway, the whole way that things were handled in concentration camps was the exact same outlook, that the people were just pieces of machinery. You pushed them till they broke, and when you broke, you replaced them, because there was an endless supply, because they were constantly bringing them in. So it was just not an issue. And it's so difficult for me to understand how how you get to the point where you can see people this way. And also realizing that, like, that used to be something that was reserved for situations in dystopian novels and, you know, the dark history of World War II. But we're rapidly reaching that point in simple capitalism, where there's always another person I can hire, and just as soon as this one drops or gets broken, it doesn't matter. We had a period in the United States, and I say a period because this was by no means like the standard. There was a brief period there where labor rights were making it so that people could, like, have a work-life balance and family and afford a home and stuff. We had a, like, pretty good setup, but it was so brief, and we've turned a corner, and now we're really being treated a lot more like this. So we see everybody, you know, doing the construction on the bridge, and the back-breaking work that they're doing. This girl is, like, climbing up the ducts with it looks like a giant stone, like, roped to her back that she's carrying. She's serving food to the other soldiers. Even though she's starving, she still has to carry this food to them, and, like, they trip her. Eventually, an old man falls down and starts, like, it looks like he's gonna die. And one of the guards is drunk and starting to, like, use his whip. And all of the workers gather around him, and it seems pretty threatening. It felt for a moment like maybe they were going to rise up in their numbers against him. But they then mention, like, well, if you step out of line, we're going to send you to the prison tower, and none of you want that. And this is when we go up to Robin again, who evidently the point of this tower is that it's simply open to the elements, so she's freezing. And they keep, like, pouring ice water on her. And they say something about how they can hand her over to the Navy and they'll get a nice reward for it because there's no difference to them whether she's alive or dead. They're still going to collect. They keep threatening this. I don't know if they've actually called the Navy and notified them or what, because they're right. They could collect. So why are they doing this to begin with? Are they just going to kill her? I don't get it. There's a moment here when they start laughing, and she says in the sub, "What crude laughter." And the guy freaks out and calls her a bitch. But in the dub, she says, "Your mothers must be so proud," which I don't know. I kind of liked better. But yeah, I don't really get exactly what their deal is here with, like, the threats. They're acting as if, like, oh, if you don't cooperate. And it's been a while since the beginning of this, like, arc with her. What are they trying to get out of her? I don't even understand what it is they're after here. Either way, we go back into the cafeteria area, and the woman who had informed on them that Nico Robin was here, she gets a present from one of the guards of a box of chocolates. And the little girl watches her run out because somebody else says something about a filthy informant. And they're shunning her, understandably, because she did something very shitty. But the little girl is trying to take Nico Robin's giving herself up in this heroic way. She's trying to emulate her and be as strong as Nico Robin is. So she decides that she's going to go out there and talk to this woman and attempt to sort of, like, see eye to eye and if she can forgive her. I do enjoy this woman being like, "Get the hell out of here. You're not getting any chocolate. This is mine." That's a whole mood. And she tells the little girl, "I wanted to get out of here and I don't feel sorry for what I did at all." Which, there is a part of me that kind of appreciates that she isn't immediately remorseful. She's just like, you know what? I fucking did what I did, and I wanted I wanted freedom, and I was willing to sell you out for it, and that's just all there is to it. She eventually apologizes, but I understand the position that she's in, you know? She says, we're just all so helpless. We have to stay here for the rest of our lives and just be treated like this. And she gives the chocolates to the little girl who decides that she's going to hand them over to Nico Robin, which is a frankly superhuman level of restraint that this kid has. I can't even imagine being that small and that hungry, and somebody gives me a box of candy and I decide to save it for somebody else. Like, truly, she is a saint and should be honored among children. So Robin is in her cell, and she is, I won't say passed out, but she has basically like laid down. She's exhausted. And they finally have left off like torturing her for the day. And she hears this voice, and there's a man in the next cell over who apparently he is just elderly and was imprisoned for the simple fact of being elderly, that like they say we're worthless if we can't work. So they put me in here. And she, you know, the kind of camaraderie that develops between the two of them, they're chatting, and she's sort of like getting urgent about Rayleigh. She has his Viva card still in her hand and is watching what direction it's going there. And she's like, I have to get out of here, even if I have got to cut my arms off. And this old man hears her, and he's like, look, don't be hasty. Listen carefully. And he says, don't you hear something? And we see the little girl again, just like, I guess, hauling rocks to the edge of the bridge. It's so funny because she's shown doing all of this different work throughout the day, but everything looks like a completely independent project that she's been sent on. There's nobody around, like, also doing the same task as her. It all feels very disconnected from each other, which is, it doesn't matter, but it's just amusing to think that she's just walking around finding like random shit to do. But she has to find her way to the tower, and she is, you know, the place is heavily guarded, and she's attempting to hide behind things, and eventually there is this explosion in a guard tower, and it's a very sudden out of nowhere thing. And you see these two figures running away from the tower, one of whom is wearing like a giraffe headdress and seems underneath that to have an almost like feline nose. It's a brief glimpse. I'm paused on it now. The sides of his headdress also almost look like speakers. It's really weird. And the other person is wearing what looks to be almost a wide-brimmed bowler hat. I'm sure there's another name for that kind of hat, but it's got a green feather in it, and they're wearing a heavy, like, yellowish cloak, and they have coral-colored pants, and they're both carrying pistols. And they're hurrying away. So clearly these are like Confederates working with that old man, I think. But they begin to fire on the guards. And one of them comes up and says, the warden ordered all of us to go and break it up. And the dude who tells them this, he says it, and he's got a like mouse tattooed on his cheek or something. And when he says this and they run off, he looks around as if to be like, I hope nobody caught that. So he's clearly up to no good as well. And when I say up to no good, I mean up to very good, because he's on the right side of things. Well, the little girl comes up to the tower. Soren, that is her name. Thank you, Robin, for saying it out loud so that I got to see it. And she's trying to bring... Oh, it's not a mouse. It's like a serpent or something. Oh my God, wait a second. Hold on. Is this Dragon? Who is this? Hold on. Wait a second. Hang on. He's got a glowing eye. There's something going on here. What's up with this guy? He comes up to her anyway, and it's just like, what are you doing here? And looks very threatening, but I was not worried for her because clearly something is going on, right? We cut then to one of the guards going up to the captain and telling him like, oh, hey, there was an incident, but as ordered, all of the teams went to break it up. So don't worry, it's taken care of. And the captain's like, wait, what? I didn't give that order. What are you talking about? Oh, don't tell me that you sent all of the dudes who were guarding the fucking tower, did you? And, oh no, that's right. I'm an agent of the Revolutionary Army. Because that's why I thought he had a mouse on his face, because he has the mouse ears. I knew there was a mouse thing, but like the drawing on his cheek is really weird. It's very stylized. So, he lets the old man out, who then says, oh yeah, and hey, while you're at it, let the other girl out too. So they get the keys, and I love the fucking captain being like, I do not give a shit about the dissidents. You have got to deal with Nico Robin. And y'all, they have to go through all of the keys to like get her unlocked, and I was starting to get so agitated. I figured it's a cartoon. She puts the one key in, done and done. Not so lucky, actually. They finally get her undone, and just as this one guy yells, Nico Robin, she's right there, shoot her to death, the whole screen goes black and white, and her arms come up out of their shoulders, and she snaps all their necks. And you guys, the cheer that I let out, it was so rad. It was so sudden, like she had just barely gotten her hands free. It was really well done, the timing of this. I loved it so much. So Nico says goodbye to Soren, and it's like, the people here have done so much for me, and I have to repay the favor. The warden is sobbing. Oh my God. I love Soren saying, you have a nice name. And just the weirdness of that moment. She's just standing in the middle of like the walkway, watching Nico walk away, all cheerful about her name. I feel like there was supposed to be something significant about her saying this, but I couldn't figure out what it was meant to be. It just, you know what I mean? It just felt like a weird, pointed moment that I wasn't picking up on. We have a really brief bit where we go back to the ship that has Luffy on it, and he's just sitting up on the figurehead, and it's this episode and the next one where they're talking about their plans, and it's like meant to be that there's a bit of an argument between everybody, but it just seems like we're just checking in with them, and any time that there's a conversation to be had, it doesn't seem to matter all that much. It's just, we had to have something happen while we were over here, you know? And Jinbei is saying like, I don't know about the wind. I'm not sure if we're actually going to be able to get there in time, but dude, you really should rest. You can't just stay awake this whole time. And he almost says something to Luffy about how he isn't sure if they'll get there in time, but decides that he isn't going to feed into Luffy's anxiety, which is good because Luffy is sitting there just staring at the Viver card and has an expression on his face. He is determined, as usual. So this is when we go back to Usopp and Heraclesen. You guys, this is such a weird story. So, Heraclesen is... what a weird character. He is feeling a lot like Usopp's alter ego. I said that last time. But really here when Usopp is telling him, well, you're a strong, cool hero and I want to be like you, it just really motivates him to like get up and do shit in a way that feels like Usopp. And they are still being chased by these carnivorous plants, which truly is so rude. This giant pointy-toothed fucking sunflower, like, it really was reminding me of the flower in the movie. I can't remember the name of the Baron, but you know the one I'm talking about. It's not as incredibly creepy as that, but pretty close. I love fucking Hercules, and is that how Heracles? He punches Usopp by accident and sends him like flying into the sunflower in such a way that it's almost as if he punched the sunflower, but not exactly. The whole bit is very silly. But eventually, they all collapse head first in the dirt, and they have a little bit of a respite here. And he says something about how he's so hungry. And Heracles is like, oh, okay, I have some place that we can go and get you something to eat. And they turn a corner, and there is a ramen waterfall with like, it's got noodles. It's like a whole thing, spaghetti on plates that are like growing out of the ground. There are hams growing down from the trees like fruits. And there are rocks made of chocolate as well. And he says, you can eat whatever you see. Everything is safe. And you guys, there's like corn dogs in the background and stuff. Like, this is delightful. I really wish that Luffy got to come here. Can you imagine? He would lose his entire mind. I was a little bit surprised at how hard Usopp goes, because while he can be greedy, it's never usually like this kind of greedy. I was just not expecting him to completely go off the deep end the way that he does. So what Heracles is saying is like, eat up and build your stamina, and then you'll be able to be strong. And he's like, well, you can't just eat. As he's watching Usopp continuing, he's like, you need to work out too. And Usopp's like, yeah, I know, but I need to be eat a lot to become a cool hero of the forest like you, right? And Heracles has this moment of like, you want to become like me? And gets very pumped about this. We see this amazing moment of him like flexing and looking really dashing. And then Usopp standing up next to him, absolutely jacked, wearing nothing but a loincloth with like these thick thighs and huge delts and everything. And I was like, wow, okay. Did this actually happen? But no, that's in his imagination. And then he turns and looks at Usopp, and he's gone. And there's a chunk dug out of the ground, because evidently the ground is also ham. You can see like the pink inside. There's a cake like off in the background. He runs after Usopp, and he's running past like a couple of vegetable kebabs. There's all of these chicken legs coming off of a bush. We've got giant donuts and what looks like the top of either an ice cream or a cupcake. Just all of these different types of food. And he's saying, it's too good, I can't stop even though I'm full. And finally, when this dude catches up with Usopp has gotten fat. Now, you guys know, as a fat person, I have some sensitivity to fat jokes. And I actually was pleasantly surprised that this wasn't worse. As much as it's annoying that he is fat, and the whole way that like Heracles is like, what did you do to yourself? I was just glad that, like, they don't make him so revolting. Actually, Fat Usopp is kind of adorable. You know, like, he's kind of cute. And the main thing that Heracles is saying is like, dude, if you're too heavy, like, you were having trouble here because you were being pursued and you were too weak to fight back, all you've done is gain weight. This does not help. Like, what do you think this is going to do? And there's no arguing with that. That's true. So at this point, the ground begins to move. And you see an outside view of the island, which looks like this giant, weird cactus-like flower. And its prongs begin to lift, like it looks like two petals. And you find out that, like, it's got a mouth in the center, and the ground, it's just where its prey hangs out until it feels like tilting them back into its mouth. Usopp falls, and Heracles tries to save him, but Usopp has gained so much weight that he can't hold him, and he has to let go. You see Usopp falling, and he's like, at one point, all of this, like, ramen appears in front of him, the noodles, and instead of, like, grabbing it like I thought, what we see is Usopp eating his way up the ramen so that his mouth is pulling him back to safety. It is the weirdest effect. And by the time he's done with that, he's not only just fat, he has also grown like 6 feet vertically somehow. But yeah, this is when Heracles is like, dude, if you're fat, you're a much more appealing target for this thing. You're going to get eaten. Like, you're not going to escape these islands. That's impossible. And Heracles just starts to say his name again and like pose. And that's the end of the episode. So you see what I mean with like the tone after everything that happens with Nico Robin, and it just feeling kind of like, what are we doing here, guys? So the next episode. Oh man, y'all, this is so weird. So we start off on the ship with Luffy again, and there's a little bit of an argument. I feel like it was it Crocodile or Jinbei? One of them is saying like, I'm going to be the one that's that fights Whitebeard, and I can't remember, but they kind of like snipe at each other about it. I think that's a little bit later on in this episode. My bad. I thought it started that way, but it looks like it doesn't. We start off with Perona and Zoro. And this thing with Zoro, like, it's going to take almost no time to talk about this. There is very little to this entire plot. Zoro is, like, being taunted by Perona. And she, for herself, has been super lonely. So she sent him on, she sent him to find the sword that she, like, took away from him. But evidently, she told him exactly where that sword is and where to find it. And because he is so bad with directions, he cannot find his way back again. So we just see her sort of waiting around for him to, like, I don't know if the point was supposed to be that she put it in her bedroom and she's trying to seduce him, and luring him to her bedroom is like part of her plan. But she's waiting around and he is not showing up. And we see him continuously going in like every wrong direction. And she's getting really frustrated. And it's just like, what am I even doing? This was supposed to be fun and I'm just fucking bored. And, you know, I thought that I had struck on a really great idea. But it's been 2 days since I told him where his sword is. And I've given him every hint and he's not finding it. What more am I supposed to do? I really enjoy her just floating around looking sad. And when he's upset, he accuses her of using her power on him. And she's like, I don't have to. You're already depressing enough, which I did think was a pretty good response. So she says, again, I told you, go up the stairs and down the hall. Your sword's right there. And he's like, you're just not being clear enough. And she's like, I genuinely do not know how I can be any clearer. It's sort of sad how pathetic you are when you don't have a sword. Like, I thought you were kind of a badass, and look at you right now. This is so pitiful. And she just starts crying, which was honestly hilarious. And then all of a sudden, she gives him a thumbs up and says, good things will happen to you someday. What is happening here, guys? It's like, I think what it's supposed to be is that she's crying because he's so pathetic. But then she feels bad about letting him see that she feels sorry for him. And she decides to try and like cheer him on, but in the most patronizing way possible. I think that's what's meant to be happening here. It's just such a weird little scene, you know? But finally, she just like leads him to the room and says, here, you can have it back. And he's like, why are you doing this? And she's like, well, I'm not concerned because even if you do try and attack me, I'm not in my actual body. This is just one of those projections. So you won't even be able to hurt me. And you guys, just the whole thing that he can't find his way to the sword. This is our whole, you know, like, it's just such a weird, I don't know. It just feels really, limp, I guess. And she seems to be thinking that if she manages to take advantage of him, she'll be able to somehow ditch him on the island, but find her way back to Thriller Bark. And I truly don't know why she thinks that, what it is that she believes he's going to be able to do to get her back there. But she's in the middle of thinking about this when she looks up and he has used his sword to cut a hole in the castle wall and has fled. So she's already lost track of him. And he's running away through the forest, and we have a flashback again of what happened at Sabaody, and he's like, she eventually catches up with him and is like, you really thought that you were running in the right direction? You have no sense of direction. Like, why are you even out here by yourself? And realizes that she's kind of trying to help him and sort of thinks, maybe I'm more kind-hearted than I thought because I just can't seem to be able to resist helping him. Which is kind of funny. I like Perona. She's such a weird character. But yeah, she's like, just follow me. And he's like, okay, sounds good. And then he immediately begins to like veer off into the undergrowth. And she's like, I don't understand how you can't even follow me properly. Like, what is wrong with you? And we have a kind of a jump ahead in time. And she's thinking to herself how exhausting it is to be with him. And he's like, well, you're flying. You're not even walking. How are you flying? And she's like, or not, how are you flying? How are you tired? And she's like, just being around you, dude, it's fucking draining. And as they're talking about this, you see these like red eyes in the forest. You hear an axe go through a tree and the tree goes down. And she had thought that like, you know, it was just the two of them on this island. So she's a little bit startled. And as he's like, are you just going to leave me here? She says to him basically that I was only hanging out with you because I was bored. If there's somebody else here that's not as boring, I would rather be with them. And as she flies off, she's like, I hope it's somebody cute this time. And she's flying, and he turns around and looks at her and is like, where are you going? It was him in front of her somehow. It's so confusing. And she's like, I don't understand this. Are you some kind of creature? What's going on here? Unclear to me as well. Did she lose track of her own location and think that she had been flying forward but actually flew in a circle? What's meant to be happening? I do not understand the implications of this. At one point they're walking through all of this rubble, and there's a tree that's clearly, it's the one that was just cut down. And she's sort of like, oh, I guess that noise I heard was just a tree falling down, but it's clearly been cut. There's an axe there. And she's not really asking well, who could have chopped it? What's going on there? She continues talking to herself about how maybe it was evil spirits. You guys, this is there's no plot to this. It's so bizarre. I cannot emphasize enough how nothing the whole thing with Zorro is. It takes so long for anything to happen, and once it happens, it's almost like it didn't. The amount of walking that they do, but their surroundings really barely change until they get to these ruins. And even here, they're just exploring, looking around, nothing happening. The whole atmosphere is meant to be spooky. That's about it, right? And eventually they get to this spot where there's a cross and there's a mound of moss or something at the base of it, which they both take to be a tomb. And she says it looks like it's been carved out of a single tree, which takes a lot of skill. And as she's looking at it, there's a sort of flash behind him. He turns and has his sword almost out of its sheath. He can tell something's up, but he can't see anything. And she is not paying attention at first, so she turns and sees him ready to fight, but clearly doesn't understand where this is coming from. When all of a sudden, this shadow comes at him, and it goes so fast. It manages to slash him in the face, which is quite a feat considering what we know of Zorro's reflexes. And when he strikes back, it just bounces off. And Perona is just up in the air yelling hey, look out, because it turns and gets another sword. It looks it's covered in fur, but he turns and there's a bunch of them. It looks like there's maybe 20, and it's hard to tell whether they're actually real or if it's projections, if they're able to do. I think that it's a real number, right? There's multiples of them. But it's weird because Perona's been here for a while and evidently has never seen these. She seems as shocked by them as Zorro does. So I don't know what to make of them. But guys, that's where it ends, is just all of these creatures growling at him. We go through all of that and nothing happens. It's so boring. Then we go to Brooke. And evidently, after appearing amongst these Satanists, I suppose you could call them, he's waking up and feeling really lonely, trying to enjoy the morning, but missing his friends. He comes outside and he realizes how the whole place is in ruins, and that yesterday he clearly interrupted some sort of weird ritual, and he doesn't know what it was they were after. But evidently the name Satan does not mean anything to him. He does not know that this is the devil, or that they assume he is a god exactly. The villagers come forward to make an offering to him. And, as he is wont to do, he's just, oh, thank you all so much. And Picori is the one that introduces himself. And they're please accept this food. And this girl is holding the offering. And of course he has to say the thing about seeing her panties. So all of these dudes lift their robes and show him their boxers, which I frankly appreciated a great deal. And we jump ahead in time. He starts like yelling, no, I don't need to see that. Thank you. I'm good. Abruptly, we jump ahead in time. It was a weird cut to him saying how full he is and thank you all so much. And it turns out he, in this interval, has eaten like a full week's worth of food, which they did not intend for. It seems like he either is simply unaware of how little they have, or they are used to making such a small amount of food stretch for so long that it never occurred to him that was not meant to all be one meal. I think it's supposed to be the first one, though, that he's just like eaten an ungodly amount. So this is when he tells them all, like, hey guys, so hate to do this, but I need a favor. I have got to get back to my friends. I've got to sail off. Do you have a ship? And these people are really upset because they thought, you know, he had been summoned for their benefit, that he had appeared here to save them. And they don't understand why he wants to leave, and they're assuming they did something wrong. And so instantly all of them show him their underwear again because they figure that's what he wants. That's what he's after. And he might stay if they keep doing it. But at this point, the dude in charge, whose name I have already forgotten, says, well, if you leave, then that's it for us. If we can't keep you here, these people are going to completely run roughshod over us. There is this, I think they're called the Long Arm Clan, if I'm not mistaken. But they're a group of like fearsome people that are looting their village and taking their people. The Long Arm Tribe, that's what it is. And when Brooke sees their despair, he's like, all right, why don't you tell me about the problem? Exactly what's going on? Because maybe I can help you before I leave. And yeah, he says they take not only goods and food, but they also take men and women in their prime from us. And as you can see, our country is devastated and suffering from extreme poverty. And that's when Brooke is like, oh my God, wait, those meals, was that all of your food? And they're like, yes, that was everything we had. In order to get out of the situation, we keep praying to all of the gods and goddesses, trying to find somebody out there to help us, like just throwing darts basically, and praying that they hit something. And this guy is like, we want you to curse our enemies to death. When that didn't work, we resorted to black magic. And then you showed up, the king of the devils, summoned here. You're our one and only hope. And at this point, they get interrupted by these guys showing up and just picking up a woman and running off with her. It's a bizarre scene because Brooke is like, why aren't any of you doing anything? They're just saying, hey, give her back, stop it. Meanwhile, they're not trying to fight back. They don't have weapons. They're backing away even as they're saying, hey, we're going to give you hell. And Brooke is like, why aren't you doing anything? You guys, they're taking her. And they're like, yeah, we know. Quick, put a curse on them. Go ahead, do it. And Brooke is like, why? I don't need to put a curse on them. You could literally just stop them. There's like 30 of you. And there were 3 of those guys. And as he turns around, they just disappear into the brush with this girl. And Brooke is like, I do not understand what's happening. He turns around and they're all like trying to cheer him on to go and punish these people, and they're bowing to him. And he's like, So wait, they're just this dependent on other people? This is really bad. She doesn't deserve to just be abandoned like this. And he says, all right, guys, so you showed me a lot of panties. And due to that, I'm going to help you. But it's clear like he's figuring that we're going to find another way to do this. We go inside and he starts writing music. And it's weird because like, as he's writing this music, it's almost like he's writing a letter. And I was like, is this supposed to be his language? Is he writing a letter, but it's a song? I wasn't really sure what this was supposed to be implying. But he's thinking to himself how if after everything he doesn't repay them for all of they've done for him, he will basically not be a man anymore. But he says like it'll spoil my skeletonhood, and is asking for more time. And it's just like, hey, don't worry, I'll be there soon. And it's like, I don't know where you're sending this. I don't know who's carrying the mail. I don't know why you're writing musical notes instead of letters, if that's supposed to be your language. But we don't see his plan here. That's how that section ends. And this is when we jump back to Crocodile and Jimbei. And Crocodile is saying, we're moving too slowly, dude. Like, by the time we get there, everything's going to be over. The Navy isn't the one that's going to beat Whitebeard. I am. And Jimbei says, is that still the way you feel? And Crocodile says, I can beat you first if you want. And they just like glare at each other for a moment. And then all of a sudden they start to fight. And Luffy gets up and just punches his fist into the other. Like he has his back to them. And they still stop in response to him standing up. I thought he was going to yell at them for fighting amongst themselves. That he was like, guys, we can't afford to be bickering right now. We have a bigger prize ahead of us. He doesn't say anything to them at all. He just stands up and says, Ace, I'm on my way. Wait for me. It's not over yet. That's the end of the episode. It's really weird, and I did not care for the structure of these at all. So apparently there's some filler episodes next that I am meant to skip. And then I go into, let me make sure, just like as I'm talking to you guys, that I have the right idea in my head here of what I'm meant to watch next. So episodes 457 and 458 are skips. And then I'm meant to do 459 and 460. So that's what's on the docket. But I really hope that we wrap on these little side quests because they do not feel like they were thought out. I don't know if these are from canon or if they were added to sort of flesh things out on the side of the show. I don't know what's going on, but it feels like a lot of nothing. The only thing that seems at all really thought out is Robin's storyline, which is part of what makes it seem like such an outlier. So yeah, you know, while our friends are getting eaten by giant plants and thrown around by giant birds or wearing dresses and seeing panties, she's being waterboarded and breaking men's necks. It's a very different energy. But yeah, that's about all I've got to say about these two. So I'm a little under time. Rare that happens, but I've gone over enough that I feel okay with it. So thank you again so much, you guys, for listening. Hope you're enjoying the coverage, even though I was not feeling these episodes. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Unspoiled Network podcast.